In this video, we're going to talk about how to create a tile prefab that we can reuse over and over to build out a grid that we'll use for the base of our map. Before we get started, you'll want to make sure you have your Unity project set up, and then you're going to go ahead and open up your sample scene. Be sure that your Unity version is 6000.0 dot something, something that ends with an F, preferably. If you don't have an F there, if it's a B or an A, that means it's an alpha or beta. We want the F release of a 6000.0. If you're using a later version, 6000.1 or 2 perhaps, it might work, but there may be some changes that are different in your version. Also, if you find that your screen does not look like mine, you might want to go ahead and switch into the default layout. You can do that from the top menu, Windows, go down to Layouts and select Default. You should end up in the same view here. If you ever end up in a situation where you can't find some of the windows, that will also work. Just Window, Layouts, Default, really good thing to have sort of memorized there to reuse and get you back into a working space. Really common error you might run into when you're first starting out in Unity. Next, let's go ahead and get the assets that we're going to be using for this video. I'm going to be using Kenny's Tower Defense Kit. Kenny has a ton of amazing assets that are all public domain, which means you can use them for free without even giving credit, but you always should give credit because Kenny is so awesome. Make sure you direct people here. Go ahead and come to this site and download these assets. Once you have them downloaded, we're going to go ahead and add some of these into our scene. It'll come in this zipped archive file here that you can't actually pull things out directly. So if you actually open up this file and you try and pull something out of this folder, it won't let you move it directly into Unity. So you need to make sure you extract that first and then have that folder separate out here. So we're going to go ahead and open up that folder. We're going to go into models, and then we're going to get the FBX model formats. Let's make sure we're in our assets folder here. We're going to take these FBX model, this folder, we're going to drag it in, and this will actually import these files into your project so you can use them. So it'll take just a moment. Depending on the speed of your computer, it might take a little bit longer, but it shouldn't take too long. Next, we want to make sure that we rename this folder so we know what the heck they are at a later time. So on Windows, I can press F2. On Mac, you can press Enter to rename. You can also right-click and select Rename here. And I'm going to name them a little bit more appropriate. I'm going to call them Kenny Tower Defense Kit. Spelled defense right here. Kit. For myself so I can remember what these are when I'm looking through at a glance here. Now over in my assets tab here, I can find it. Go ahead and open up that tower defense kit, and we'll find when we just go in here, we're going to find a bunch of models. If you're not seeing the icons for them, you can actually adjust the size of them. Maybe they're too small to see. Maybe it's just text. There's this little slider down here that you can click and drag to change the size of the preview that you get. This can be super useful when you're looking at textures, sprites, all sorts of good stuff. And we're going to find the tile that we want to use here. And I happen to know it's just called tile. It's going to be the grass tile that we use. I'm going to take this model. We're just going to drag it into our scene here. Now in our hierarchy, once this loads, we can select this tile and we'll see that we're sort of out in the middle of nowhere, like so. Before we start dragging extra tiles in like this, we're going to go ahead and create what's called a prefab. Some of you have probably used prefabs before, but it's usually never too early to create a prefab. If you know you're going to be reusing that thing a bunch, we might end up changing it later. So I'm going to actually take this object here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to create an empty parent. I'm going to go ahead and call this grass tile. So I have my grass tile here. And then I'm going to put this into my assets. I just take this game object here. I can drag it down here. It's going to make it so now I have this blue prefab grass tile. I can pull it in and we'll get a copy of everything in there. One of the cool things about our prefabs is that we can actually edit this tile. So if I come in here, notice this says tile. This is really the model that we're using. We could swap this out here. If we select this tile here, let's say we wanted to get a snow theme. We could actually click right here on our mesh filter. I have my tile selected, my mesh filter here, and I search for snow tile. Might just come in here and select my snow tile. Maybe I want to change the theme a little bit. By changing the prefab, I actually change all of the objects that are using this prefab. So it's really, really useful, especially if you're planning to reuse this. This is great for enemies, it's great for player, characters, weapons, etc. Anything you might be using. All right, so we have this grass tile here. I'm going to change that back. I want mine, I'm calling it a grass tile. I want it to be green. You can change yours to a snow tile if you want. I'm going to call mine a grass tile. I'm going to go and find the tile here. Boop, set that up. Happy, glad to go. Happy as a clam, you might say. Now I can click on these. One thing that we're going to struggle with, at least I struggle with, I'm not good enough, is getting these precisely lined up. We'll can try and get them lined up together here, come around here. Doing this manually is going to be really, really taxing, kind of difficult to get in here together like that. We could potentially instead set these manually, do 1 and 3, and I'll take this tile, put it at 1 and 4, and now they're perfectly lined up. It turns out that these tiles happen to be one unity unit in size, their width and their width and depth there, so pretty easy to do. I think they're 0.2 units tall if you decide to make a third dimension there, but not too bad to get it in there like that. If we wanted to make a 3x3, we could add in some more here. Move this down, and you'll notice this is kind of painful to go through and do. Imagine we wanted to build a map that was much larger than this. This could take an awful lot of time to do, so we end up with a bunch of tiles like this. So I'm going to show you a little trick. I'm showing you a little trick that we can use anytime you find yourself doing something really monotonous like this. We're doing this repetitive task. You should ask yourself, is there a better way to do this that's a little bit less error prone? And if there is, do it. And if there's not, maybe you can create your own script to do that thing. We're going to start off by using an almost automated way to do this. And then later in the project, we'll talk about how we can actually build our own grid generator. We're not going to do that yet, but I hope you get excited about that idea. Let's go ahead and make a 10 by 10 grid. So right now I have 9 of these. Let's go ahead and make another one. So I have 10. And I can select all of these. If I select one and hold shift and select another, it'll actually select all the ones in between. If you don't want to select all of them that way, you can actually hold control, and then you can sort of like multi-select partial things like this. On Mac, hold down command rather than control. Let's go and select all of them like this. And I want to put these in, I want to put them into something called a grid. So I'm going to put them on, so I'm going to create an empty parent. Notice they all get lumped in there. I'm going to call this tile grid like this, and I want to space these out nice and even in one long row. I'm going to move them all so they're at origin 0, 0, 0. Check this out. Unity has this really cool feature that lets us space things really quickly. We can use what's called linear spacing. Syntax in my X here, I'm going to type L parenthesis 0. I want to start the first one at 0, and I want the last one to end at, we have 10 of these, so 9, and it will automatically space them evenly. If I had selected L0 to 10, it would space them evenly between 0 and 10, and then we'll see there's a little gap in them because we essentially have not enough tiles to fill it in. So it's 0 to 9. If we did 1 to 10, it would work, but we like to be at the origin. So we're going to do 0 to 9 like this, and we're going to get all of these tiles evenly spaced. And we clicked on them, you'll see that they're actually evenly spaced on that X 1 unit apart. You might end up with some minor rounding things. Okay. Next, let's go ahead and I'm going to group these again. I'm going to call this a row. So this is a row that I have here of all my tiles. And I'm going to duplicate this 10 times. If I click on an object here, I'm rushing through this a little bit. Let's click on our row here. I'm going to press Control D. You'll notice it duplicates it. Control D will duplicate an object that you have selected. If you have multiple selected, it'll duplicate all of them. Let's go ahead and make 10 of these. And our previous row was on the x-axis. Let's do the next one on the z-axis. We can do linear from 0 to 9. Boom. We have this nice 10 by 10 grid here with our grass tile prefab. Awesome. Give it a shot. Get yourself a nice 10 by 10 grid here, and I'll see you in the next video.